Good morning.
Good morning.
What is your name?
David Rohm,
Where are you from?
Pittsburgh, PA.
Is it painful to talk about the war?
No,
What did you do for a living before you joined the military?
I worked in a power plant.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
No, I enlisted.
What drove you to join the military?
I wanted to do it long before I did, but because of circumstances at home, I couldn't do it right away, right after Pearl Harbor.
When did you join?
December 15th, 1942.
What branch did you serve in?
Army Air Corps.
Why did you choose the Army Air Corps?
I always wanted to fly, and I remember one time I jumped off the back porch roof with an umbrella for a parachute. Of course, it turned inside out and my knees hit me in the chin. But anyhow, when I tried to get into cadets to be a pilot, they told me I could not pass the physical because when I was 6 years old, I had an operation on my stomach for gangrene of the bowel, and they said I would not be able to take altitude. So when I did take my aptitude test, they told me I was best qualified for radio, so I signed up for radio school.
What were the first days of the service like?
I remember this. I would lay in the bunk at night and think, I'm dreaming. I'm not here. I'll wake up and I'll be home. That went on for, I guess, about 3 or 4 days till I realized I was in. That was it.
Where did you serve?
Training was usually in the part of the states where the weather was good for flying, other than radio school. That was Chicago in January, which was very cold. But the training was 1 year to the hour from the time I went into the service until I was flying over Pittsburgh going overseas. So I was flying out of England over Europe, doing bombing missions over Europe. And this is before the invasion, so Germany controlled all of Europe except Sweden and Switzerland and Spain, I guess. So we were always over enemy territory.
And you said you were a radio operator?
Yes, when I could not make cadets, I signed up for radio school. When I graduated from radio school, I tried it from another angle. I signed up for gunnery school. Well, then when I went to gunnery school, they gave me a physical, a flight physical again, and told me that I could not fly because of the operation. I could not take altitude. So in fact, they wanted to discharge me. They said I shouldn't be in the service. But by dumb luck, prior to the physical, the same day, I went in the pressure chamber and qualified for 36,000 feet. So when I showed the flight surgeon that, he said, okay, I'll push you through, but if you ever have any trouble, you go to the flight surgeon and ground yourself. So I thought I would do my 25 missions and then come back to the States, and that would be proof enough that I could take altitude and I could get into cadets. Of course, it didn't work out that way.
So you were a radio operator on bombers?
I was a radio operator gunner on a B-17.
And what unit were you in?
I was in the 8th Air Force, 96th Bomb Group, flying out of England.
How much combat did you see?
Well, when we first got to our bomb group, the commanding officer talked to us, and he explained that if you were lucky and did 5 missions, you would get the Air Medal. If you were damn lucky and did 10, you would get an oak leaf cluster to the Air Medal. And if you did 15, you were cheating like hell. So I assumed from that we had to do 25 missions before we were finished. So I made up my mind I was going to get my 25 missions in a hurry by volunteering for extra missions. So we went on our first mission January 29th, 1944, was to Frankfurt, Germany. When I got back, I could have cared less if I did another mission or not, and I wasn't anxious anymore. So most of the missions varied right around 8-9 hours. However, the one mission to Posen, Poland, they told us it would be approximately 12.5 hours long, and you had gasoline for 12 hours, so fly it lean or you'd never make it back. Well, the mission, however, took us 12 hours and 15 minutes, and we did make it back. But the majority of times when you went on a mission, you did not know until the middle of the night that there was to be a mission, because the weather was so bad and it would change so fast in England. So when there was a mission, they'd usually wake us about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd go to breakfast. Then from breakfast we would go to the general briefing where everybody was involved, and the very strict was security there. They would have the mission or the briefing in a building that was secured by the MPs, and they checked all names as you went in, so that only people going on a mission would be inside. At the front of the room they had a large map with curtains across. So you got in there, you still didn't know where you were going. When the CO would start the briefing, he would pull that cord real slow so you would see your mission where it was going through, and they would map it out with ribbon and thumbtacks. So he would start out by saying, you got a long no ball today, and pull that curtain real slow and use the edge of your seat to see how far that mission was going to be. But anyhow, like I said, the majority of the missions were somewhere around 8-9 hours, and the weather was so bad, it was like 50 degrees below zero. You wore heated suits with heated gloves and boots attached. If any part of your bare skin was exposed, you got frostbite. So, and you'd be on oxygen the whole time, because the majority of the missions were right around 24,000 feet. So when you'd get back over England, off would come the oxygen mask, and the first thing I did, and the majority of the crew, was get a cigarette out. And by this time, it's 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We haven't had anything to eat since 3 o'clock in the morning. And they always gave us a Milky Way and a pack of gum. Why the gum, I don't know. But you could not chew the gum or you could not eat the Milky Way until your oxygen mask come off. So anyhow, when we dropped down from altitude over England, our Milky Way would be frozen, and we would try that and we'd smoke a cigarette. So then when we landed, the first thing you did was go back to operations, and the whole crew would sit around a table, and you'd have an interrogation officer interrogating you, wanting to know anything out of the ordinary, what did you see, anything of value, and so forth like that. And by this time, you're like 4 o'clock, maybe 5 o'clock even, before you finally get out of your heated suit and get back to the barracks or the mess hall for dinner. Well, then that evening, you never knew whether there was going to be a mission the next day. So that first mission to Frankfurt, the next morning they woke us bright and early again, and we went to Brunswick, Germany, which was about the same thing, 8, 9 hours for the mission. But we were on our 11th mission when we got shot down. So when we started out on that one, I started to think to myself, well, we're almost halfway, maybe we will get them all in. But as luck would have it, we didn't. So this mission, our 11th mission, was March 8th, 1944, and our target that day was Berlin. But we did not quite make it. Fighters shot us down before we got to the target. And of course we had to just drop our bombs, period, at random, because 2 passes and the fighters had knocked out 2 engines and the plane was on fire. So there's only one alternative, and that was to bail out. So at that time, the German civilians were stringing the airmen up instead of taking them prisoners. So our intelligence told us, if we happen to get shot down, make for the uniform, either a soldier or a policeman, someone like that, to surrender. But if the civilians get you, use your .45 sidearm, but save one shell, one shell for yourself, because when I was coming down, it was 12 o'clock, high noon, nice bright sunny day, not a cloud in the sky, but I could see this mob gathering, watch me coming down, so I loosened my parachute harness except for the one strap across the chest. And as soon as I hit the ground, I flipped that open and let the wind take the parachute and the harness, and I took off across the field, opposite direction from the mob. And there happened to be 2 German soldiers coming across the field to get me. They saw me coming down too, so they turned their guns up to the civilians and stopped the civilians and took me prisoner.
So you were a POW in Germany.
Right.
can you tell me more about that, like how long you were a POW and what that was like?
Yeah, I was a POW for approximately 14 months. But that day when they captured me, of course, they searched me and they took anything they wanted, which included my cigarettes and everything else. And then they took me by train to Frankfurt, Germany, a place called Dulag Luft. That's an interrogation center for airmen. So intelligence had told us all about it, and they said, you'll be there from anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks unless you talk. And then they'll keep you there longer to get some more out of you. But if you stick to name, rank, and serial number, usually you're out of there within 10 days. So I think I was there approximately the 10 days, somewhere around there. But it's like solitary confinement. You're in a small room, no furniture, and no windows, and they pull you out any time at all, guarded, come and get you and take you to a room where a German officer would interrogate you. And usually these German officers spoke very good English, so it was no problem understanding them. And like I said, if you stuck to name, rank, and serial number, you were all right. But they used to try to get more out of you, not trick questions, but like he said to me, home address, what's the problem with giving a home address? He said, don't you want your mother to know that you're a prisoner? Sorry, sir, name, rank, and serial number is all I can tell you. And then he come to religion. He said, maybe you're Catholic. He said, you're dying, you want a priest. He said, we'd get you a priest. Of course, you stick to that name, rank, and serial number, and then they wanted to know the names of the rest of the crew. I did not give them that. So then they give me the story. They said, well, maybe the rest of the crew got in the underground, they're trying to escape. So when we catch them, they're in civilian clothes, no dog tags, and we have to shoot them as spies. Don't you want to save them? Name, rank, and serial number. But of course, a couple of times he hit pretty close to home. But anyhow, they even threaten you, they're going to take you out and shoot you as a spy. We have a lot of spies that land here with dog tags, but they're fake ones. But anyhow, that's about all they did. I mean, when I did get out of there, they took us into another barn-like building, huge, all open, and they took us into one section and they searched us again and took practically everything we did have to wear. And one of the things they took was my leather jacket. So after they searched you, then you went over into another section of the building for shipping out. So as I walked by the pile of jackets, I picked mine up again, held it in me, and walked over to the other section of the building. And when we left, I guess there was about 200 of us lined up out front, and I was the only one with a leather jacket. But afterwards, I thought that was awful stupid. I mean, they could have shot me without any trouble, you know. But why I did it, I don't know. But anyhow, from there, then they put us in box cars, and they put, I think, about 20 of us in half a box car, and the other half was for 5 German guards. And the doors are locked on the outside, and the only thing they have is a lantern hanging in the center of the boxcar to give you some light. So we just all got inside the boxcar. It wasn't long after that the air raid siren went off. So when that went off, these guards put the bench across the center of the boxcar, put fixed bayonets on the rifles, and they sit down on that bench with the rifle between their legs, just staring at us. And all of a sudden, the RAF come over and start dropping bombs, and that boxcar is just rocking, and those guys are rocking with it, and so are we. And they just stared at us. But after the all clear sounded, I'd say within 2 hours, they hooked up and started moving us on. And we got to Stalag 6, a prison camp up near the seaport of Memel in East Prussia. And that was the first prison camp I was in.
And how long were you in that prison camp?
That was somewhere around